Good morning, reading room, which I usually say good afternoon. I'm still late for the morning time that I said I was going to be here. These things are all screwed up. What's going on? She's making a mockery of the classroom, not the classroom. Tea as well is, oh my goodness gracious, it really does seem to be for my tooth issue, which is a shame. Somebody out there is like, get that son of a gun to stop chewing her gum. I know how I can get her to stop. And then we've got, wishful thinking. Which is a shame because it came to my mind that somebody said you could tell you have good teeth because you're chewing gum all the time. Son of a bitch. Look what came. Not my family. But the book, and it's in beautiful shape. And we have a few pictures in here, I think. But they were probably the same pictures you guys got, because now that I see it, it's mostly words. The old gentleman looked up and saw how the young people lay in one another's arms. Yeah, we saw that a long time ago. Okay, so we are here on chapter 6. Book 6 in this book, day 6 in the classroom, which is actually day 282 in the classroom, and it's actually December 9th. Thanks for joining me. Oh, about the Bookless classroom. Yeah, you're probably wondering what the hell, seriously? Because I'm not done. And you're probably wondering absolutely jack shit. All right, I'll stop my cussing right at the beginning of the reading room. Maybe not. Well, you're getting close to the middle, so yeah. Book 6, Northward Along the Canyon. I think we do like having this up, if I recall. Although it doesn't have to be gigantic. I'm the big shot in the picture. For being unlike the magnanimous man, they yet ape him, and that in such particulars as they can. Aristotle. Much of the soul they talk, but all awry, and in themselves seek virtue. Milton. I do not admire the excess of some one virtue unless I am shewn at the same time the excess of the opposite virtue. A man does not prove his greatness by standing at an extremity, but by touching both extremities at once and filling all that lies between them. Pascal. I really like Blaise Pascal. My son was named after him. His middle name. It was a Catholic derivative. Contempt is a well-recognized defensive reaction. Contempt is a well-recognized defensive reaction. I.A. Richards. You know where my mind is always going whenever I see a Richard there, and then an IA. New English. For the dummies. First steps to the north. So chapter 1 of book 6. First steps to the north. Is this really what we're on? Day 6? No, we're on day 7. Yeah, because 5 was really short, right? No. All right, give me a second. I'll give you some music. Okay, I'm back. And yeah, we're on day 6. Okay, all right. Sorry. It looks so familiar, and this is getting to be a little monotonous. Other than the little jokes like I.A. Richards. First steps to the north. It is of no use keeping to the road, said Virtue. We must explore the cliff edge as we go along and make trial descents from point to point. Begging your pardon, sir, said Drudge. I know these parts very well, and there is no way down, at least within 30 miles. You'll miss nothing by keeping to the road, for today at any rate. How do you know, said Virtue. Have you ever tried? Oh, bless you, yes, said Drudge. I've often tried to get across the canyon when I was a youngster. Clearly, we had better follow the road, said John. I do not feel quite satisfied, said Virtue, but we can always take the cliffs on the way back. I have an idea that if there is a way down, it will be at the extreme north where this gorge opens on the sea, or failing everything, we might manipulate the mouth of the gorge by boat. In the meantime, I dare say we might do worse than press on by road. I quite agree, said John. Then I saw the 3 set forward on a more desolate march than I had yet beheld. On every side of them, the tableland seemed perfectly flat, but their muscles and lungs soon told them that there was a slight but continuous rise. We read this. No comprendo. It's like what we're suggesting is every one of these things is off. But maybe oh, did we read 2 in the beginning? Have we been rereading? No, we have not been. No, it's day 6, but it's chapter 8. Sorry. Sorry, Charlie. Yeah, I still have that in there. The big threat. It might be in the title. I don't know. Now I've just got a memory that we're on chapter 8. And this is all screwed up because of this, right? You know? Book 8, app 8. All right. All right. It says day 7, which means book 7. Let's see if this sounds familiar, shall we? We're a mere, right on time. Almost. Early even for the 12 o'clock Bookless classroom. Hold on. So baby aspirin and tea. Miracle workers. Maybe people pray over the tea. You think people could pray over leaves? You think that's what it is? Book 7, Southward Along the Canyon. Now is the 7th winter since Troy fell, and we still search beneath unfriendly stars through every sea and desert isle for Italy's retreating strand. But here is kinsman's country, and a cestus land. What hinders here to build a city and remain? O fatherland, O household spirits preserved in vain, from the enemy shall no new Troy arise, shall no new Simois there renamed for Hector's memory flow. Rather come, burn with me the boats that work us harm. Virgil. Through this and through no other fault we fell, nor being fallen bear other pain than this, always without hope and desire to dwell. Dante. Some also have wished that the next way to their father's house were here, that they might be troubled no more with either hills or mountains to go over, but the way is the way, and there's an end. Bunyan. Chapter 1, Virtue is Sick. I saw the 2 travelers get up from their sacking and bid goodbye to their hosts and set out southwards. The weather had not changed, nor did I ever see any other weather over that part of the country than clouds and wind without rain. Virtue himself was out of sorts and made haste without the spirit of haste. Then at last he opened his mind, and to his companion and said, John, I do not know what is coming over me. Long ago you asked me, or was it media asked me, where I was going and why, and I remember that I brushed the question aside. At that time it seemed to me so much more important to keep my rules and do my 30 miles a day, but I'm beginning to find that it will not do. In the old days, it was always a question of doing what I chose instead of what I wanted, but now I am beginning to be uncertain what it is I choose. How has this come about, said John. Do you know that I nearly decided to stay with Savage? With Savage? It sounds like raving, but think it over. Supposing there is no landlord, no mountains in the east, no island in the west, nothing but this country. A few weeks ago, I would have said that all those things made no difference, but now I don't know. It's quite clear that all the ordinary ways of living in this country lead to something which I certainly do not choose. I know that even if I don't know what I do choose. I know that I don't want to be a halfways or a clever or a sensible. Then there is the life I have been leading myself, marching on I don't know where. I can't see that there is any other good in it except the mere fact of imposing my will on my inclinations. And that seems to be good training, but training for what? Suppose after all it was training for battle. Is it so absurd to think that might be the thing we were born for? A fight in a narrow place, life or death, that must be the final act of will, the conquest of the deepest inclination of all? I think my heart will break, said John, after they had gone many paces in silence. I came out to find my island. I am not high-minded like you. Virtue. It was never anything but sweet desire that led me. I have not smelled the air from the island since. It is so long that I cannot remember. I saw more of it at home, and now my only friend talks of selling himself to the dwarfs. I am sorry for you, said Virtue, and am sorry for myself. I am sorry for every blade of grass and for this barren rock we are treading and the very sky above us, but I have no help to give you. Perhaps, said John, there are things east and west of this country after all. Do you still understand me so little as that? Cried Virtue, turning on him. Things east and west? Don't you see that this is the other fatal possibility? Don't you see that I am caught either way? Why, said John, and then let us sit down. I am tired, and we have nowhere to hurry to. Not now. Virtue sat down as one not noticing that he did it. Don't you see, he said, suppose there is anything east and west. How can that give me a motive for going on? Because there is something dreadful behind? That is a threat. I meant to be a free man. I meant to choose things because I chose to choose them, not because I was paid for it. Do you think I'm a child to be scared with rods and baited with sugar plums? It was this reason that I never even inquired whether the stories about the landlord were true. I saw that his castle and his black hole were there to corrupt my will and kill my freedom. If it was true, it was a truth an honest man must know. Evening darkened on the tableland, and they sat for a long time, immovable. I believe that I am mad, said Virtue presently. The world cannot be as it seems to me. If there is something to go to, it is a bribe, and I cannot go to it. If I can go, then there is nothing to go to. Virtue, said John, give in. For once yield to desire. Have done with your choosing. Want something. I cannot, said Virtue. I must choose because I choose because I choose. And it goes on forever. And in the whole world, I cannot find a reason for rising from this stone. It is not reason enough that the cold will presently kill us here. It had grown quite dark, and Virtue made no reply. Virtue, said John, and then suddenly, again, in a louder voice, frightened Virtue! But there was no answer. He groped for his friend in the dark and touched the cold dust of the tableland. He rose on his hands and knees and groped all about, calling. But he was confused and could not even find again the place whence had risen him. He could not tell how often he might have groped over the same ground, or whether he was getting further and further from their resting place. He could not be still. It was too cold. So all that night he rummaged to and fro in the dark, calling out Virtue's name, and often it came into his head that Virtue had been all along one of the phantoms of a dream, and that he had followed a shade. Chapter 2, John leading. I dreamed that morning broke over the plateau, and I saw John rise white and dirty in the new twilight. He looked all round him and saw nothing but the health. Then he walked this way and that, still looking, and so for a long time. And at last he sat down and wept. That also for a long time. And when he had wept enough, he rose like a man determined and resumed his journey southward. He had hardly gone 20 paces when he stopped with a cry, for there lay Virtue at his feet. I understood my dreams that during his groping in the darkness, he had unwittingly gone further and further from the place where they had first sat down. In a moment, John was on his knees and feeling for Virtue's heart. It beat still. He laid his face to Virtue's lips, then breathed still. He caught him by the shoulder and shook him. Wake up, he cried. The morning is here. Then Virtue opened his eyes and smiled at John a little foolishly. Are you well? Said John. Are you fit to travel? But Virtue only smiled. He was dumb. Then John held out his hands and pulled Virtue to his feet, and Virtue stood up uncertainly, but as soon as he made a stride, he stumbled and fell, for he was blind. It was long before John understood. Then at last I saw him take Virtue by the hand, and leading him, resume their journey to the south, and there fell upon John that last loneliness which comes when the comforter himself needs comforting, and the guide is to be guided. The main road again. They found Mr. Sensible's house empty, as John had expected, with the shutters up and the chimney smokeless. John decided to push on to the main road, and then, if the worst came to the worst, they could go Mother Kirk. But he hoped it would not come to that. All their journey south had been a descent from the northern mountain to Mr. Sensible's, but after his house it began to rise again a little to the main road, which ran along a low ridge, so that when they had gained the road, the country south of it was suddenly all open before them. At the same moment there came a gleam of sunshine, the first for many days. The road was unfenced to the heath on its northern side, but in its southern side there was a hedge with a gate in it, and the first thing John saw through the gate was a long, low mound of earth. He had not been a farmer's son for nothing. Having led Virtue to the bank of the road and seated him, he lost no time in climbing the gate and digging with both hands into the earthen mound. It contained, as he had expected, turnips, and in a minute he was seated by Virtue, cutting a fine root into chunks, feeding the blind man and teaching him how to feed himself. The sun grew warmer every moment. The spring seemed further on this place, and the hedge behind them was already more green than brown. Among many notes of birds, John thought he would distinguish a lark. They had breakfast well, and as the warmth increased pleasantly over their aching limbs, they fell asleep. That's the chai or Kai tea flavor from Yogi. I really like the brand Yogi because I always Well, it's consistent. Yeah, I like it. I consistently like the tea, and I feel like it does what it says it does. There are other tea brands that are right around the same price at Better Health, which you think would be expensive, but it's not. Not their tea anyway. It's it's competitively priced. Absolutely, I think it's more expensive at maybe even Walmart. Who even knows? I don't know. But I remember before. I mean, I had to be so little. I don't know. Probably a piece of tea in there. I'm like, I don't know what's in there. Going south, when John awoke, his first look was towards virtue, but virtue was still sleeping. John stretched himself and rose. He was warm and well, but a little thirsty. It was a four-cross road where they had been sitting for the northern road, at which John looked with a shudder, but was but the continuation of a road from the south. He stood and looked down the ladder to his eyes, but now accustomed to the dusty flats of the northern plateau, the country southward was a rich counterpane. The sun had passed noon by an hour or so, and the slanting light freckled with rounded shadows a green land that fell ever away before him, opening as it sank into valleys and beyond then into deeper valleys again, so that places on the same level where now he stood yonder were mountain tops. Nearer hand were fields and hedgerows, ruddy ploughland, winding woods, and frequent farmhouses white among their trees. He went back and raised virtue, and was about to show it all to him when he remembered his blindness. Then, sighing, he took him by the hand and went down the new road. Before they had gone far, he heard a bubbling sound by the roadside, and found a little spring pouring itself into a stream that ran henceforth with the road, now at the left, now at the right, and often crossed their way. He filled his hat with water and gave virtue to drink. Then he drank himself, and they went on, always downhill. The road nestled deeper each half mile between banks of grass. There were primroses, first one or two, then clustered, then innumerable. From many turns of the road, John caught sight of the deeper valleys to which they were descending, blue with distance and rounded with the weight of trees, but often a little wood cut off all remoter prospect. The first house they came to was a red house, old and ivied, as well back from the road, and John thought it had the look of a steward's house. As they came nearer, there was the steward himself without his mask, pottering about at some light gardening labor on the sunny side of the hedge. John leaned over the gate and asked for hospitality, explaining at the same time his friend's condition. Come in, said the steward. It will be a great pleasure. Now I dreamed that this steward was the same Mr. Broad who had sent a case of sherry to Mr. Sensible. He was about 60 years of age. Tea on the lawn. It is almost warm enough to have tea on the lawn, said Mr. Broad. Martha, I think we will have tea on the lawn. Chairs were set, and all three sat down on the smooth lawn surrounded by laurels and laburnum. It was even warmer than in the road, and suddenly a sweet bird note shot out from the thickets. Listen, said Mr. Broad. It is a thrush. I really believe it is a thrush. Maidservants in snowy aprons opened the long windows of the library and came over the grass carrying tables and trays. The silver teapot and the stand of cakes. There was honey for tea. Mr. Broad asked John some questions about his travels. Dear me, he said when he heard Mr. Savage, dear me, I ought to go and see him. And such a clever man, too. By your account, it is very sad. John went on to describe the three pale men. Ah, to be sure, said Mr. Broad. I knew their father very well, a very able man. I owed a good deal to him at one time. Indeed, as a young man, he formed my mind. I suppose I ought to go and see his boys. Young Angular I have met. He is a dear, good fellow, a little narrow, I would venture to say, even a little old-fashioned, though of course I wouldn't for the world. The two brothers are doing splendidly, I've no doubt. I really ought to go and see them, but I'm getting on, and I confess it never suits me. It never suits me up there. It's a very different climate from this, said John. I always think it is possible for a place to be too bracing. They call it the land of the tough-minded. Tough-skinned would be a better name. If one has a tendency to lumbago. But dear me, if you have come from there, you must have met my friend, Sensible. You know him too? Know him? He is my old friend. He's a kind of connection of mine. And then, you know, we are quite near neighbors. He is only a mile north of the road, and I am about a mile south of it. I should think I did know him. I have passed many, many happy hours in his house. The dear old man, poor Sensible, he is aging fast. I don't think he has ever quite forgiven me for having kept most of my hair. I should have thought his views differed from yours a good deal. Ah, to be sure, he is not very orthodox, perhaps, but as I grow older, I am inclined to set less and less store by mere orthodoxy. So often the orthodox view means the lifeless view, the barren formula. I am coming to look more and more at the language of the heart. Logic and definition divide us. It is those things which draw us together that I now value most. Our common affections, our common delight in the slow pageant of the countryside, our common struggle towards the light. Sensible's heart is in the right place. I wonder, said John, if he treats that servant of his very well. His language is a little rough, I suppose. One must be charitable. You young people are so hard. Dear me, I remember when I was a boy myself. And then a man of Sensible's age suffers a good deal. We are none of us perfect. Will you not have a little more tea? Thank you, said John, but if you can give me some directions, I think I would like to continue my journey. I'm trying to find an island in the west. That is a beautiful idea, said Mr. Broad, and if you will trust an older traveler, the seeking is the finding. How many happy days you have before you, and I want to know, continued John, whether it is really necessary to cross the canyon. To be sure you do. I wouldn't for the worst hold you back. At the same time, my dear boy, I think there is a very real danger at your age of trying to make these things too definite. That has been the great error of my profession in past ages. We have tried to enclose everything in formulae, to turn poetry into logic and metaphor into dogma, and now that we are beginning to realize our mistake, we find ourselves shackled by the formulae of dead men. I don't say that they were not adequate once, but they have ceased to be adequate for us with our wider knowledge. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Those great truths need reinterpretation in every age. How many times have I said that? Holy shit, I mean, what came first, the chicken or the egg? C.S. Lewis, you might know. Wow. Wow. When I became a man, I put away childish things. It is Corinthians 13:11, I do believe. I think my son would know. I think my mom would know too. These great truths need reinterpretation in every age. Didn't I say that in one of my classes? Didn't I say that in my Love and Sex in the 21st Century? I'm not sure that I quite understand, said John. Do you mean that I must cross a canyon or that I must not? I see you want to pin me down, said Mr. Broad with a smile, and I love to see it. I was like that myself once, but one loses faith in abstract logic as one grows older. Do you ever feel that the truth is so great and so simple that no mere words can contain it? The heaven and the heaven of heavens, how much less this house that I have builded? Well, anyway, said John, deciding to try a new question. Supposing a man did have to cross the canyon, is it true that he would have to rely on Mother Kirk? Ah, Mother Kirk. I love and honor her from the bottom of my heart, but I trust that loving her does not mean being blind to her faults. We are none of us infallible. If I sometimes feel that I must differ from her at present, it is because I honor all the more the idea that she stands for, the thing she may yet become. For the moment, there is no denying that she had let herself get a little out of date. Surely for many of our generation, there is a truer, a more acceptable message in all this beautiful world around us. I don't know whether you are anything of a botanist, if you would care. I want my island, said John. Can you tell me how to reach it? I am afraid I am not specially interested in botany. It would open a new world to you, said Mr. Broad, a new window on the infinite. But perhaps this is not in your line. We must all find our own key to the mystery after all. I wouldn't for the world. I think I must be going, said John, and I have enjoyed myself very much. If I follow this road, I shall find anywhere that will give me a night's lodging in a few miles. Oh, easily, said Mr. Broad. I should be very glad to have you here if you would care to stay. But if not, there is Mr. Wisdom within an easy walk. You will find him a delightful man. I used to go and see him quite often when I was younger, but it is a little too far for me now. A dear good fellow, a little persistent perhaps. I sometimes wonder if he is really quite free from a trace of narrow-mindedness. You should hear what Sensible says about him. But there, we are none of us perfect, and he is a very good sort of man on the whole. You will like him very much. The old steward bade goodbye to John with almost fatherly kindness, and John, still leading virtue, pursued his journey. Chapter 6, The House of Wisdom. The stream that they had followed to the steward's house was now no longer a brook by the roadside, but a river that sometimes approached, sometimes receded from the road, sliding in swift amber reaches and descending silver rapids. The trees grew more thickly hereabouts and were of larger kinds, and as the valley deepened, tiers of the forest rose one above the other on each side. They walked in shadows, but far above their heads the sun was still shining on the mountain tops, beyond the forest slopes and beyond the last steep fields, where there were doomed summits of pale grass and winding water glares, and cliffs of color of doves and cliffs the color of wine. The moths were already flying when they reached an open place. The valley widened, and a loop of the river made room for a wide and level lawn between the banks and the wooded mountains. Amidst the lawn stood a low pillared house, approachable by a bridge, and the door stood open. John led the sick man up to them and saw that the lamps were already lit within, and then he saw Wisdom sitting among his children like an old man. You may stay here as long as you wish, he said, in answer to John's question, as it may be that we shall heal your friend if his sickness is not incurable. Sit and eat, and when you have eaten, you shall tell us your story. Then I saw the chairs were brought for the travelers, and some of the young men of the house carried water to them to wash. And when they had washed, a woman set a table before them and laid on it a loaf and cheese and a dish of fruit with some curds and buttermilk in a pitcher, for we can get no wine here, said the old man with a sigh. When the meal was over, there was silence in the house, and John saw that they waited for his story. So he collected himself and cast back in his mind a long time in silence, and when at last he spoke, he told the whole thing in order from the first sight he had of the island down to his arrival among them. Then virtue was led away from John, and he himself was brought into a cell where there was a bed and a table and a pitcher of water. He lay on the bed, and it was hard but not lumpy, and he was immediately in a deep sleep. And the picture here is, then they went on together over hills and dales very fast in the moonlight. Very interesting. Chapter 7 of Book 7. Across the canyon by moonlight. In the middle of the night, he opened his eyes and saw the full moon, very large and low, shining at his window, and beside his bed stood a woman darkly clothed, who held up her hand for silence when he would have spoken. My name is Contemplation, she said, and I am one of the daughters of Wisdom. You must rise and follow me. Then John rose and followed her out of the house onto the grassy lawn in the moonlight. She led him across it to its westward edge, where the mountain began to rise under its cloak of forest. But as they came right up to the eaves of the forest, he saw that there was a crack or crevice in the earth between them and it, to which he could find no bottom, and though it was very wide, it was too wide to jump. And though it was not very wide, it was too wide to jump. It is too wide a jump by day, said the lady, but in the moonlight you can jump it. John felt no doubt of her and gathered himself together and leaped. His leap carried him further than he had intended, though he felt no surprise, and he found himself flying over the treetops and the steep fields, and he never alighted till he reached the mountain top, and the lady was there by his side. Come, he said, we have still far to go. Then they went on together over hills and dales very fast in the moonlight till they came to the edge of a cliff, and he looked down and saw the sea below him. And out in the sea lay the island, and because it was moonlight and night, John could not see it so well as he had sometimes seen it, but either for that reason or for some other, it seemed to him the more real. When you have learned to fly further, we can leap from here right into the island, said the lady, but for this night it is enough. As John turned to answer her, the island and the sea and the lady herself vanished, and he was awake in daylight in his cell in the house of wisdom, and a bell was ringing. This side of sunlight, chapter 8. On the next day, Mr. Wisdom caused John and Virtue both to sit by him in a porch of his house looking westward. The wind was in the south, and the sky was a little clouded, and over the western mountains there was a delicate mist, so that they had the air of being in another world, though they were not more than a mile away. And Mr. Wisdom instructed them, as to this island in the west and those eastern mountains, and as touching the landlord also and the enemy, there are two errors, my sons, which you must equally conquer and pass right between them before you can become wise. The first error is that of the southern people, and it consists in holding that these eastern and western places are real places, real as this valley is real, and places as this valley is a place. If any such thought lingers in your mind, I would have you root it out utterly and give no quarter to that thought, whether it threatens you with fear or tempts you with hopes. For this is superstition, and all who believe it will come in the end to the swamps and the jungles of the far south, where they will live in the city of magicians, transported with delight in things that help not, and haunted with terror of that which cannot hurt. And it is part of the same error to think that the landlord is a real man, real as I am real, man as I am man. That is the first error, and the second is the opposite of it, and is chiefly current to the north of the road, It is the error of those who say that the eastern and western things are merely illusions in our own minds. This also it is my will that you should utterly reject, and you must be on your guard lest you ever embrace this error in your fear of the other, or run to and fro between, and the two as your hearts will prompt you to do, like some who will be materialists, for that is the name of the second error, when the story of the black hole frightens them for their lawless living, or even when they are afraid of specters, and then another day will believe in the landlord and the castle, because things in this country go hard with them, or because the lease of some dear friend is running out, and they would gladly hope to meet him again. But the wise man, ruling his passions with reason and disciplined imagination, withdraws himself to the middle point between these two errors, having found that the truth lies there, and remains fixed immovably. But what that truth is, you shall learn tomorrow, and for the present this sick man will be cared for, and you who are whole may do as you wish. Then I saw Mr. Wisdom rise and leave them, and Virtue was taken to another place. John spent the most part of that day walking in the neighborhood of the house. He crossed the level grass of the valley and came to its western edge, where the mountain began to rise under the cloak of forest. But as he came under the forest eaves, he saw that between him and the first trees there was a crack or crevice in the earth, to which he could find no bottom. It was very narrow, but not quite narrow enough to jump. There seemed also to be some vapor rising from it, which made the further side indistinct, but the vapor was not so thick, nor the chasm so wide, but that he could see here a spray of foliage, and there a stone with deep moss, and in one place falling water that caught the sunlight. His desire to pass and to go on to the island was sharp, but not to the degree of pain. Mr. Wisdom's words that the eastern and western things were neither wholly real nor wholly illusion, had spread over his mind a feeling of intent, yet quiet comfort. Some fear was removed, the suspicion, never before wholly laid at rest, that his wanderings might lead him soon or late into the power of the landlord, had passed away, and with it the gnawing anxiety lest the island had never existed. The world seemed full of expectation, even as the misty veil between him and the forest seemed both to cover and discover sublimities that were without terror and beauties without sensuality, and every now and then a strengthening of the south wind would make a moment's clearance and show him withdrawn in unexpected depth remote reaches of the mountain valleys, desolate fields of flowers, the hint of snow beyond. He lay down in the grass. Presently one of the young men of the house passed that way and stopped to talk with him. They spoke of this and that, lastly, and at long intervals. Sometimes they discussed the regions further south where John had not been. Sometimes his own travels. The young men told him that if he had followed the road a few miles beyond the valley, he would have come to a fork. The left-hand turn would lead you by a long way round to the parts of Claptrap. The right went to the southern forest, to the city of the magicians, and the country of Nectaris. And beyond that, it is all swamp and sugarcane, said he, and crocodiles and venomous spiders, until the land sinks away altogether into the final salt swamp, which becomes at last the Southern Ocean. There are no settlements there except a few lake dwellers. Theosophists and whatnot, and it is very malarial. While they were speaking of the parts that John already knew, he asked his informant whether they in the House of Wisdom knew anything of the Grand Canyon or of the way down into it. Do you know, said the other, that we are in the bottom of the canyon here? Then he made John sit up and showed him the lie of the land. The sides of the valley drew together northward, and at the same time grew more precipitous, so that at last they came together into a great V, and that V is the canyon, and you are looking into it endways from the southern end. The eastern face of the canyon is gentle, and you were walking down into it all day yesterday, though you did not notice it. So I am in the bottom of it already, said John, and now there is nothing to prevent me from crossing it? The young man shook his head. There is no crossing it, he said. When I told you we were now at the bottom, I meant the lowest point, at that can be reached by man. The real bottom is, of course, the bottom of this crevice which we are sitting by, and that, of course, well, it would be a misunderstanding to talk of getting down it. There is no question of crossing or of getting to what you see over there. Could it not be bridged? Said John. In a sense, there is nothing to bridge. There is nowhere for this bridge to arrive at. You must not take literally the show of forest and mountain which we seem to see as we look across. You don't mean that it is an illusion. No, you will understand better when you have been longer with my father. It is not an illusion, it is an appearance. It is a true appearance, too, in a sense. You must see it as a mountainside or the like, a continuation of the world we do know. And it does not mean that there is anything wrong with your eyes or any better way of seeing it to which you can attain. But don't think you can get there. Don't think there is any meaning in the idea of you, a man, going there as if it were really a place. What? And the island too. An island too. You would have me give up my heart's desire? I would not. I would not have you cease to fix all your desires on the far side, for to wish to cross is simply to be a man, and to lose that wish is to be a beast. It is not desire that my father's doctrine kills, it is only hope. And what is this valley called? We call it now simply Wisdom's Valley, but the oldest maps mark it as the Valley of Humiliation. The grass is quite wet, said John after a pause. The dew is beginning. It is time that we went to supper, said the young man. Chapter 9, Wisdom Exoteric. The next day, as before, Wisdom had John and Virtue into the porch and continued to instruct them. You have heard what you are not to think of the Eastern and Western things, and now let us discover, as far as the imperfection of our faculty allows, what may rightly be thought. At first consider this country in which we live. You see that it is full of roads, and no man remembers the making of these roads, neither have we any way to describe and order the land in our minds except by reference to them. You have seen how we determine the position of every other place by its relation to the main road, and though you may say that we have maps, you are to consider that the maps would be useless without the roads, for we find where we are on the map by the skeleton of roads which is common to it and to the country. We see that we have just passed such a turn to the right or the left, or that we are approaching such a bend in the road, and thus we know that we are near to some other place on the map which is not yet visible on the countryside. The people indeed say that the landlord made these roads, and the Claptrapians say that we first made them on the map and have projected them by some strange process from it to the country. But I would have you hold fast to the truth, that we find them and do not make them, but also that no man could make them. For to make them, he could need a bird's eye view of the whole country, which he could have only from the sky. But no man could live in the sky. Again, this country is full of rules. The Claptrapians say the stewards made the rules. The servants of the giants say that we made them ourselves in order to restrain by them the lusts of our neighbors and to give a pompous coloring to our own. The people say the landlord made them. Let us consider these doctrines one by one. The stewards made them. How then came they to be stewards, and why did the rest of us consent to these rules? As soon as we ask this question, we are obliged to ask another. How comes it that those who have rejected the stewards immediately set about making new rules of their own, and that these new rules are substantially the same as the old? A man says, I have finished with rules, henceforth I will do what I want. But he finds that his deepest want, the only want that is constant through the flux of his appetites and despondencies, his moments of calm and passion, is to keep the rules, because these rules are a disguise for his desires, say the giants following. But I ask, what desires? Not any and every desire. The rules are frequently denials of these desires. The desire for self-approbation, shall we say. But why should we approve ourselves for keeping the rules unless we already thought that the rules were good? A man may find pleasure in supposing himself swifter or stronger than he really is, but only if he already loves speed or strength. The giant's doctrine thus destroys itself. If we wish to give a seemly coloring to our lusts, we have already the idea of the seemly, and the seemly turns out to be nothing else than that which is according to the rules. The want to obey the rules is this presupposed in every doctrine which describes our obedience to them, or the rules themselves as a self-flattery. Let us turn then to the old tale of the landlord. Some mighty man beyond this country has made the rules. Suppose he has. Then why do we obey? Then why do we obey them? Mr. Wisdom turned to Virtue and said, "This part is of great concern to you and to your cure." Then he continued, "There can be only two reasons, either because we respect the power of the landlord and are moved by fear and the penalties and hopes of the rewards with which he sanctions the rules, or else because we freely agree with the landlord, because we also think good the things that he thinks good. But neither explanation will serve. If we obey through hope and fear, in that very act we disobey. For the rule which we reverence most, whether we find it in our own hearts or on the steward's card, is that rule which says that a man must act disinterestedly. To obey the landlord thus would be to disobey. But what if we obey freely because we agree with him? Alas, this is even worse. To say that we agree and obey because we agree is only to say again that we find the same rule written in our hearts and obey that. If the landlord enjoins that, he enjoins only what we already purposed to do, and his voice is idle. If he enjoins anything else, his voice again is idle, for we shall disobey him. In either case, the mystery of the rules remains unsolved, and the landlord is a meaningless addition to the problem. If he spoke, the rules were there before he spoke. If he spoke, the rules were there before he spoke. If we and he agree about them, where is the common original which he and we both copy? What is the thing about which his doctrine and ours are both true? Of the rules, then, as of the roads, we must say that indeed we find them and do not make them, but that it helps us not at all to assume a landlord for their maker. And there is a third thing also. Here he looked to John, which specially concerns you. What of the island in the west? The people in our age have all but forgotten. The giant would say that it is again a delusion in your own mind, trumped up to conceal lust. Of the stewards, some do not know that there is such a thing. Some agree with the giant, denouncing your island as wickedness. Some say that it is a blurred and confused sight from far off of the landlord's castle. They have no common doctrine. But let us consider the question for ourselves. And first, I would have you set aside all suspicion that the giant is right, and this will be the easiest for you because you have already talked with reason. They say it is there to conceal lust, but it does not conceal lust. If it is a screen, it is a very bad screen. The giant would make the dark part of our mind so strong and subtle that we never escape from its deceptions. And yet, when this omnipotent conjurer has done all that he can, he produces an illusion which a solitary boy in the fancies of his adolescence can expose and see through in 2 years. This is but a wild talk. There is no man and no nation at all capable of seeing the island who have not learned by experience, and that soon how easily the vision ends in lust, and there is none also not corrupted who has not felt the disappointment of that ending, who has not known that it is the breaking of the vision, not its consummation. The words between you and reason were true. What does not satisfy when we find it was not the thing we were desiring. If water will not set a man at ease, then he be sure it was not thirst or not thirst only that tempted him. He wanted drunkenness to cure his dullness, or talk to cure his solitude, or the like. How indeed do we know our desires save by their satisfaction? When do we know them until we say, ah, this is what I wanted? And if there were any desire which it was natural for man to feel but impossible for man to satisfy, would not the nature of this desire remain to him always ambiguous? If old tales were true, if a man without putting off humanity could indeed pass the frontiers of our country, if he could be and yet be a man in that fabled East and fabled West, then indeed at the moment of fruition, the raising of the crop, the assumption of the crown, the kiss of the spouse, then first to his backward glance, the long roads of desire that he had trodden would become plain in all their winding, and when he found, he would know what it was that he had sought. I am old and full of tears, and I see that you also begin to feel the sorrow that is born with us. Abandon hope, do not abandon desire. Feel no wonder that these glimpses of your island so easily confuse themselves with viler things and are so easily blasphemed. Above all, never try to keep them, never try to revisit the same place or time wherein the vision was accorded to you. You will pay the penalty of all who would bind down to one place or time within our country that which our country cannot contain. Have you not heard from the stewards of the sin of idolatry, and how in their old chronicles the manna turned to worms if any tried to hoard it? Be not greedy, be not passionate. You will but crush dead on your own breast with hot, rough hands the thing you loved. But if ever you incline to doubt that the thing you long for is something real, remember what your own experience has taught you. Think that it is a feeling, and at once the feeling has no value. Stand sentinel at your own mind, watching for that feeling, and you will find, what shall I say, a flutter in the heart, an image in the head, a sob in the throat. And was that your desire? You know that it was not, and that no feeling, whatever will appease you, that feeling, refine it as you will, is but one more spurious claimant, spurious as the gross lusts of which the giant speaks. Let us conclude then that what you desire is no state of yourself at all, but something for that very reason, other and outer. And knowing this, you will find tolerable the truth that you cannot attain it, that the thing should be is so great a good that when you remember it is, you will forget to be sorry that you can never have it. Nay, anything that you could have would be so much less than this, that its fruition would be immeasurably below the mere hunger for this. Wanting is better than having. The glory of any world wherein you can live is in the end appearance. But then, as one of my sons has said, that leaves the world more glorious yet. That's an hour and 8 minutes. Let me see here. Yeah, and we still have a few pages. I'm going to call it a day because I have to get to my Bookless class, because the reason why we didn't have Bookless class was because I was not prepared for Bookless class. Totally forgot to prepare my slides. I thought I had all my day 3 slides prepared, and I forgot we were on day 4. So I'm going to prepare those and get back to you. I was hoping maybe by 2:30, something like that, but we'll see. But I'm going to stop here. It's been an hour and almost 10 minutes, and we are reading The Pilgrim's Regress by C.S. Lewis. This has been illustrated by Michael Haig. It is day 282. We are here on December 9th. And let's get that little 9 up there. And I will be back here in the Bookless classroom as soon as I feel up to it, which means as soon as but today, a little later on today, earlier than later. I just want to make sure I keep at it. We've seen more snow here in December than we have seen in a very long time in December in Michigan. So we are happy to be here in the classroom, in the reading room in particular, where we are reading the Pilgrim's Regress. I already said that. And we are exiting then our Healthy Mind, Body, Spirits program. I'll see you in a couple hours. Thanks for joining me.